Thank you so much for joining the Tree of Life tape group today with the 2 steps to spiritual freedom. And so Joel brings us another tape with more freedom, more, say, keys, more suggestions to, more, in fact, he proves, so he shows us the truth of the matter. And we're going to take a look at that today. And yeah, it's lovely to see that the New Testament is well represented in Joel's tapes. And I think there are about 10 references of the New Testament in this tape that we're going to listen to. Now, this time we had some volunteers to, and they were volunteers, to make a transcript of the tape, and so thank you for that. That's really lovely, and that's very helpful also in the preparation for the tape and to study before that. So you had a chance to do that. Now, my focus in the in between, after the meditation, before the tape starts, is about the first 20 minutes, just about, of that tape, because Joel, in fact, brings in the two ideas related to spiritual freedom. And you don't want to miss out on that, of course. But you also want to hear it really right, otherwise it doesn't make sense. So that's why we take a look at that in between. And then we listen, in the end we listen to the last 30 minutes of the tape and see what Joel will share with us. So starting today with a meditation coming from practicing the present. Now I chose that came to me, but I chose that to use that because of the fact that practicing the presence is basically the most important part in our spiritual development, because that's the only real moment that we have available for ourselves. And this perfect moment represents our perfection, but it has at the same time nothing to do with time. And it takes a moment before you enter into it because of your occupation with time-related ideas and temporal ideas about yourself. Now, to release some of those temporal ideas about yourself, Joel basically always refers or brings back the memory of the perfect moment, of the perfection of God. And so that brings us to the present moment. And in fact, it is, if you allow that moment to be whole, everything will be whole. This is one part of the steps to spiritual freedom. In fact, there is nothing else but spiritual freedom. The human idea of freedom is, of course, now that I have holidays, I'm free of work, and I'm so happy that I don't have to work. Now that feels really like freedom to me. And of course, that's always temporal. It only takes maybe 2 weeks or a week or so, and then you have to get back into the cubicle or wherever you find yourself in your work, and then your freedom is taken from you for a moment until the next holiday. Now that's why I say, like, the real spiritual freedom is what freedom is what you are. In residing in this perfect moment, that where everything is shared, everything is possible, where in fact echoes of eternity are heard. So that's really something to stand still with, and that's why we use it in the meditation, to stand still with the present moment, from practicing the present, the book. And let's start with that, to become quiet, to release our ideas, because our ideas are basically in the way of experiencing this perfect moment. And you don't want to miss out on that in order to experience your freedom, the freedom that is yours already. from Practicing the Present, the chapter The Rhythm of God, by Goldsmith. How much truth do I know about God? I know that God is omnipresent, and that therefore all God's presence and all God's power are flowing through me. Where God is, there can be nothing but good. There cannot be sin, disease, death, lack, or limitation. In God's presence is the allness of good. What else do I know about God? God is the only power. If God is the only power, there are no powers other than God. There are no negative powers on earth, so there can be no power in this condition confronting me. God is the only life, life eternal and immortal, without sin or disease, without blemish. God's life is perfect. God is love, and that love enfolds me. God's love is my protection, sustaining and maintaining me.
Le rythme de Dieu. Quelle est ma connaissance de la vérité sur Dieu? Je sais que Dieu est omniprésent et que par conséquent, toute sa présence et toute sa puissance s'infiltrent en moi. Là où Dieu est, il ne peut y avoir que du bien. Il ne peut y avoir ni péché, ni maladie, ni mort, ni manque, ni limitation. En la présence de Dieu se trouve la plénitude du bien. Que sais-je d'autre de Dieu? Dieu est la seule puissance. Si Dieu est la seule puissance, il n'y a pas d'autre puissance que Dieu. Il n'y a pas de puissance négative sur terre. Donc, une puissance ne peut exister dans la situation à laquelle je suis confrontée. Dieu est la seule vie, la vie éternelle et immortelle, sans péché ni maladie, sans tache. La vie de Dieu est parfaite. Dieu est amour, et cet amour m'enveloppe. L'amour de Dieu est ma protection. Il me soutient et me maintient.
The interesting part here with the idea of freedom and perfection of God is like that is all taken care of. God's perfection is perfect, and nothing can change that. That's not the thing. So in fact you can say like there's a reason why we are here, because we do perceive things that aren't perfect, and we do perceive relationships that are conflictual, and we do see that there are negative powers. We do see it. We do believe that they are there. We do think that we need to protect ourselves against it. That's why we're here. So you can say this moment together in this Tree of Life tape group is not just listening to a tape of Joel, because there's no such thing as a tape of Joel or just listening to a tape. No, in fact, there's an invitation going out to you to listen, to allow yourself be placed in your consciousness in a place where you actually really rather not go. What I'm saying is this is like, it is, how is it to look, to admit that you see imperfection, that you see that you do believe negative powers, that you do believe sin, disease, disaster. Otherwise you would not be noticing it, you would not be witnessing it. So here Joel in fact invites us to stand and to say like, well, I have to admit, yes, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm trying to deal with part of the day, or maybe the whole day, who knows. Like, this is something that comes up all the time, it comes back to me. The disease, the disaster, the pain, the illness, the whatever is coming to you. Like we all have our specific niche of trouble, you could say. In our spiritual development, we have a specific section where it's like an Achilles heel. It's like so vulnerable that you rather not talk about it, that you rather not go there, even in your own experience of yourself. Yeah, you would love to erase it as if it doesn't exist. This sounds familiar, doesn't it? So this honesty, like the honesty that we're opening up to, is in fact to allow yourself to stand in that place where you admit, like, yeah, it isn't perfect at all. So apparently there's in my experience of myself a lot of ignorance going on still, where I cannot accept it that everything is perfect, but it doesn't comply with what I'm witnessing. And so that's one thing to do that, to admit that is wonderful to do that. And then the next step is also, of course, is like, oh yeah, wait a minute, there's no such thing in fact as perception. Like Joel mentions it as mesmerism. Like, it's not going to tell you anything about yourself. What you perceive is not a fact. No, it has nothing to do with that. And we use terms like dream, it's a dream, and well, yeah, if you're in trouble, the dream becomes your reality. You believe it to be true, you believe it to be real, and you're caught up in it. Simple as that. You're caught up in it. Now, how to set yourself free from that is literally impossible. Or you would have done it. So this is a bit the place where we meet each other and say like, yeah, we don't know how to do that. We literally have no idea how to get out of this. And so in that honesty, something can occur. And this is exactly, in fact, where healing takes place. If you admit to yourself like, no, there's no way out of this. I don't know how to do that. Because otherwise I would have. I can pray, can do, and I've tried, and this and this and this and this. But it seems to be repeating in my experience. Now what am I supposed to do? So in that sense there's a lot of work to do. Otherwise you would simply not be here. But why would you be in a place of limitation, lack and disease and disaster? Unless you found the freedom. Unless you found ways to, say, convey the newfound freedom of you to your brothers, for instance, to take them with you. Yeah, so this is great stuff. This is really wonderful. I love this tape for that. Like, there's some real benefit to achieve from it, and the benefit is always in the release. It's never in the accomplishment of, okay, now I know it and now I should be fine. That's never it. So the vulnerable place that I'm talking about is allowing yourself to release your ideas and your hold on the ideas, to release that Exactly that. Not to hold on for it for just a moment. And here we come to a very important part of the healing, and that is this. In fact, we were practicing that in the meditation. Like, you can say, like, yeah, God is perfect, God is this, God is that, and this is what I know about God. But are you willing to experience that in this instant? So, like, when is God perfect? When is God omnipresent? When is God omniscient? When is that occurring? That can only be in one moment. And this we come to in a moment. But it's like, this can only happen in one moment. When is that moment? And how do I get there? Well, that's why we practice the presence. Like, the present moment is where that occurs. Now, the present moment has nothing to do with time, as I said in the beginning. The present moment has nothing to do with time. But the present moment is literally closer to you than breathing. It is right here. You're just one thought away of it, you could say. Now, are you willing to, in fact, collapse your ideas, to let your ideas fall apart for a moment in order to experience this perfect present moment? That's where the healing takes place. That's what the true occurrence here is. So that can only happen in this moment. There's no way that it will be better in 10 years or in 1 year or tomorrow. Like, well, I don't feel like doing that now, maybe tomorrow. It's like, no, there's no reason to delay this release. So this is the real invitation that Joel puts out, in fact, in the talk today. Now, he uses two key aspects in it, and one is a not rewarding God. Like, God doesn't punish nor reward. God doesn't know about evil. God doesn't know about rewarding. No, he created you perfect, and there's nothing to add to it or to take away from it. And now you can say, like, okay, so how can that be in benefit for me? Because I'm experiencing this, and this, and this. That doesn't seem to be so perfect at all. It's like, well, see, this is about perception, about how do I see what is going on? How do I interpret, in fact, what is going on? What is really going on here? Is this what I believe to be my reality? Is that really true? Or am I willing to let that go for a moment, to release that for a moment in order to experience something else? That brings us to the spiritual path. You could say that's where the spiritual liberation takes place. Use, in fact, allowing to release those ideas. And that means for one moment not to confirm them, not to hold on to them, but to say, like, okay, I need help here. I don't know how to get out of it. Here are my ideas. I'm sick and tired of them. I don't want them any longer. I just hand them over now. So then the other part that Joel is talking about, like the second part of the freedom, like the second step to freedom is, like, there's not a rewarding or punishing God, and there's such thing as perfection, perfect nature. See, there's another perfect idea. Perfect nature. 2 steps to spiritual freedom. And here are the biblical references. Okay, so here are some unconscious beliefs, as Joel calls them. Does God know of evil? No. Is the power of God opposed? Like, is there another power but the power of God? If God is omnipresent, omnipotent? No, there's not an opposing power. Does God reward or punish? No. The only judgment he can have about his son is, this is my beloved son, in whom I'm well pleased. Does God give and take away? No, well, these are unconscious beliefs, and they were, like, fed to you in the religious tradition. And Joel uses the example of Noah. Like Noah was chosen and the rest of the people of the earth drowned. And so that seemed like a very cruel God. So does God give and take away? No, it does not. So I go into that a little bit deeper later. Evil has no foundation in God. Evil does not have its rise in God. Neither disease, accident, death, famine, storm, drought, none of these things come forth from God. But it's an unconscious belief that you might think it does. You see then that the beginning of freedom for you is, and me, is when we begin to have a God wholly good. A God from whom can go forth nothing but spirit, eternality, immortality, justice. The moment you begin to declare the spiritual perfect nature of God, you are declaring the infinite, perfect spiritual nature of your own being in your oneness with God. On the entire spiritual path, Joel says, always the first step is this awareness of God's presence. This ability to live always as if God were bearing witness with me, God going before me. To know Him aright is life eternal. To know Him aright, not as you've been taught, but to know Him aright as that pure being in whom evil has no rise, no source, no foundation, no cause. When is the moment you can see this aright? The second step that I was referring to is then in fact a recognition that you are one with God. Like that needs to be there. Otherwise there could be something like a separation, and that's impossible. Now, here's the same as what I said before with the questions I came up with. If you think that you're separate from God, you find yourself in a state of separation. Now, this is why we come together, to recognize, no, that is not so. Even though that all my perception might point at it as if I'm separate because I'm lonely or I'm experiencing lack, disease, disaster, all of this. Like I prove that something is wrong here in my picture. But that's not taking me away from God. No, it brings me to the place where I have to admit, and this is what I was talking about a moment ago, is like, am I willing to go to the vulnerable place where I release my thoughts about myself, about God, about all the things that I see, about the things that are occurring in the world, in my country, in my life, in my family, in my, you name it. Like, am I willing to go to this vulnerable place where I say, like, this cannot be true. This simply does not define me as who I truly am. So there has to be a way to awaken from this into an experience of oneness with God. And so this is how I bring that together today. Is like I bring it together in the sense of, well, there's only one moment in which that can take place, and I'm sharing this moment of recognition of our oneness as exactly, say, pointed at this one moment where that can occur. Because there's also the simplicity of that. There's also the setting yourself free of an idea that this takes time and that you might get it at some point, hopefully before you die. Otherwise, you might do another human cycle or some kind of idea. Who knows what ideas you have. I was like, this is so important, because to admit, to see that it actually can only take place in this one moment can help you to practice this present moment, how to practice the presence, what Joel in fact teaches. Like, that's why that is so important. Otherwise you live with your idea of longevity and with, oh, that's going to take a while before I get it. Like, you have no idea, because you're not dealing with that. It's not of your business, in fact, when that is going to occur. You only have to be willing to accept it in this moment. You don't have to look for it in the future. It's not going to happen in the future if you don't allow it to happen now. Now that makes it easier, because then in fact you feel like, oh yeah, if it isn't now, then it's never going to be. Now that makes it easy. So you have no so-called excuse to delay it. You're in the right position to let go of everything for just a moment, to experience something else. Now this is the real healing that can take place in you when you recognize that. See, it's like, it is never going to be better. It is only, your human life, for instance, is found, like it has its foundation in time. And now time seems to be like sequential. It seems to be there's a moment that you were born, that you live for a moment, and then eventually you die. Like, that whole picture doesn't tell you anything about yourself, because you are not that. You're not that baby that was born. You are not that. You're not that one that is going to die. That's not going to happen to you. It's like, that is so important to recognize. That is not going to happen to you in that way that you think it will happen. It simply is not going to do that. And why is that? Because there is no such thing as time. There's no such thing as these images. It is mesmerism. It is a belief system of unconscious beliefs that we have shared. Joel calls it universal beliefs of humanhood. It's like, it is like, that is the world. That is your world. That is your world as long as you believe in it. Now this world can fall apart any time just by you giving up, valuing it, allowing yourself to have a new full-blown God experience, recognizing that you're one with God. What is missing in the moment that you're one with God? Nothing. Nothing. There's nothing missing. No one is missing. Nobody's taken away. Nobody's left. No, every one of us is present in that. Everyone is present. There's nobody missing. It is oneness. It's complete. It's whole and perfect. When are you going to allow yourself to have an experience of this one whole moment that is right now, that is right now, that is right now, that is right now? That's never going to change. It's never going to be happening later. It's never going to happen another time. No. This is the great thing about, like what Joel is sharing with us, the great opportunity to step into the present moment and let that be everything there is, because it is everything that there is. All the dreams of disease, disaster, murder, famine, all of that has not occurred, does not take place. Only in your dream. Now here it is, like, do you want to know who you truly am? Or do you want to continue your dreaming of disease, disaster and death? That is continuing forever too. It's like that, there's no end to that. Of course there's an end to it, but it's like your belief system is sustaining it. If you give up that idea, you enter into heaven. Seek first the kingdom. Well, this is really what is asked. It is actually meant when it was said, seek first the kingdom. That means in order to seek and to find the kingdom, you will have to release every idea that you hold about yourself, about this world, all of it. Just for one instant, to allow a whole moment to come to you, where you never ever have a question anymore if God is real, or if you can be healed, or if there's such a thing as awakening, or if there's an end to your suffering. It's like it immediately ends. And it is not another moment. It can only happen now. All right.
All that I have is thine. Heir of God, joint heir to all the heavenly riches. Unless you can see that oneness, it would be like the Orthodox teaching that tells us that Jesus was wholly good, the Son of God, but not you or me. Then what good is Jesus' perfection if it isn't our perfection? It's of no value to us. Therefore, of what good would it be? What good would come from God being perfect if you and I were something or somebody separate and apart from God, subject under other influences? But you see, there it is. We are not something separate and apart from God. I and the Father are one. And Son, all that I have is thine, and I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. And therefore, in that relationship of oneness, the perfection of God is our perfection, and God's freedom from the capacity of sin, disease, death, lack, limitation is our freedom. Then you can say, too, why callest thou me good? Because whatever goodness there is being made manifest through us is God's goodness. Whatever immortality is being made manifest to us is the immortality of God. Whatever of love, whatever of justice is the love or the justice of God. Whatever of intelligence, His understanding is infinite. What good is that to you or me unless He and I are one? Then His infinite understanding becomes the measure, the capacity of my understanding. Only in oneness does that happen. And so the moment you begin to declare the spiritual, perfect nature of God, you are declaring the infinite, perfect, spiritual nature of your own being in your oneness from God, oneness with God. Well, this, of course, carries us naturally into a principle of the infinite way, which I've said to you before must never be forgotten. And that is that God is not a power over evil. God is not a power over evil. And you have no power over evil. Even as Jesus said to His disciples, rejoice not that you have power over the devil. Rejoice only that your names are written in heaven. You're one with God. To believe that God is a power over evil is to believe that evil has an existence. And then you've either got to have God, the cause and creator of it, or you've got to have another cause and creator. And that does away with your omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence. So in order to be consistent, you must have only one God, one creator. And then that one without capacity for sin or any evil condition. That brings you, you see, to where you can readily accept the infinite way teaching of no power, none power. We don't need a power over sin, disease, or death, because these have no existence in God. And if they have no existence in God, they have no existence. Then they can only exist as beliefs in the human consciousness that believes in two powers. Even believes that God has two powers, the power to reward and the power to punish, the power to give and the power to withhold. Do you see how you finitize God? How you limit God? How you make God a little bit of a thing? When you make him something that has the power to give us sunshine or withhold sunshine? Gives us the power, give him the power to give us crops or withhold crops? You see, you make God really into some kind of a man. Just a man with a little more power. But God isn't that way. God can't give sunshine and God can't withhold sunshine. God can't give us purity and God can't give us the capacity to sin. God can't give us life and God can't give us death. God is eternal life, and that his life is the life of our being. He doesn't give it, he is it. He doesn't give it, he is it. God does not give us purity. God is our soul. And the soul of God being pure, our soul is pure. God doesn't give us wisdom. God is wisdom. But being infinite, God is our wisdom. There's no giving and there's no withholding. There is only ising. If there were a God life and your life, God life may be immortal and yours might be mortal. But if God is infinite life. And that means your life and my life. So you see, in order to free yourselves of the limitations of human sense, you must understand the nature of God. To know him aright is life eternal. And you'll find that this is true, that as you begin to know God as complete pure being, without any capacity to wipe out a nation or punish the sinners, a God that cannot visit disease on innocent people or guilty people, a God that cannot even permit conditions of disease or sin or war or poverty. Once you have that kind of a God, you have freed yourself, because the foundation for evil in your life is the belief that in some way God is the cause of it, the author of it, the creator of it, the maintainer of it. Know God aright, and you will have a God that you can love with all your heart and with all your soul, because you can look out on this world and witness its injustices, its sins, its disasters, and say, thank God, there's no God in those. And when you have removed God from them, you've removed the substance from them, and they begin to destroy themselves. They begin to dissolve. The world must awaken. It must awaken to the realization of God in order to remove the foundation of evil from our lives. They try to even make believe that wars are righteous and that God is on one side or another. God on the side of people out killing. God on the side of people slaughtering innocent men and women and children. You know God is not in war. God is not in the whirlwind. God is not in the storm. God is in the still, small voice. God is never in any form of force. Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit. And therefore, there is no evil where my Spirit is. For where my Spirit is, there is liberty. So it is then that you come to facing your fears. And when you face them, you'll find that you are fearing person, thing, or condition. And very often you'll find also in your worshiping that you're really worshiping person or thing or condition, as we have it here in Habakkuk. 3rd chapter, 18th to 20th verse. What profiteth the graven image, that the maker thereof hath graven it, the molten image, and a teacher of lies, that the maker of his work trusteth therein, to make dumb idols? Woe unto him that saith to the wood, Awake! To the dumb stone, Arise, it shall teach. Behold, it is laid over with gold and silver, and there is no breath at all in the midst of it. But the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. So you will find that your hopes and your fears are in person or things. It might be gold, it might be silver, it might be land, it might be securities, it might be social security. But hope and ambition and faith and confidence is always in something external, and there is our idolatry. All of which disappears when you understand that the nature of God is the nature of your individual being, and therefore you have no need of person, thing, circumstance, for you embody your good. Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. All that I have. Don't worry what somebody else has. All that I have is thine. Then, realizing that God is your very own being, how can you fear or love or hate gold or silver or germs or poisons or bullets or bombs? How can you fear that God's being, can be destroyed? And God's being is the essence, substance of my being. I may be the tumbler, the form, but God is the essence and substance even of my body. I shall not fear what mortal man can do to me. I shall not fear what mortal circumstance or condition can do to me. Why? Because God is the essence of my being, and in him there is no darkness. Therefore, in that of which I am formed, there is no capacity for negative in any form of any nature. But if I do not know the nature of God this way, how can I know the nature of my perfect self? If I do not credit God with being pure, how then can I say, I am the showing forth of God, therefore I am pure? For I cannot be any more pure than my source, my essence, my substance. Watch this simple principle. When you are witnessing evil in any form, in your own experience or in the world, or your neighbors, smile within yourself and realize there's no God in this. This never had its rise in God. It has no God substance, no God law, no God life, no God being. It is the arm of flesh. And then let it dissolve itself and disappear from sight. Remove from it that which belief gives it life. That is the belief that it comes of God, emanates from God. God is responsible for it. But withdraw that. Be able to look at any situation and say there is no God in it, no power to sustain it, no spiritual power, no law of God to sustain it. Well, but there is no power but God. Then it must dissolve and disappear. And so it is that you can face any situation in life if you can remember, be not afraid, it is I. Nothing real exists but I and the forms or expressions of I. And whatever I am, all else is. Therefore, I can look at the pictures of evil and say, no, there's no truth in you. I need not be afraid. There is only I. Well, you see then that this removes idolatry. It prevents you from loving, fearing, or hating that which has form. Because you know the real essence of all form is God. And any erroneous appearing form has no existence except in the belief in two powers, or except in the belief that God caused it. And once you remove God as the cause and foundation and source of it, you have begun its dissolution. Well, these are the two principles which I know bring freedom to us more quickly than most others, maybe more quickly than any others. The moment we can see that God is no part of the errors of this world, you realize that we are given the book Practicing the Presence as the first book to recommend to beginners. The only reason we didn't start with it is we didn't have it in our earliest days of study. But now we do recommend that book to everyone starting on the path, and the reason is this. You must understand this very well. As human beings, we are living a life separate and apart from God. We're living our own life. We're living life the way we've been taught by parents or teachers or ministers. We're living our own lives. And there's some amount of good and some amount of evil, some amount of the positive and some amount of negative in all of our lives as humans. And we have no positive principle through which to live because we have never learned of the omnipresence of God. That where I am, God is. That the place whereon I stand is holy ground. That the presence of God is within me. Therefore, the very first step that we must give to those seeking on the path is this assurance that there is a God closer to us than breathing, nearer than hands and feet, that wherever we go, God goes with us. If we mount up to heaven, we find God there. If we make our bed in hell, we find God there. If we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we find God there. And so we bring to the young student, first of all, the assurance of a God in the midst of him or her, even as there is a God in the midst of you and of me. And we turn the student's entire attention on this truth of omnipresence and of the fact that this presence of God is the only power, and that it is the bread, the meat, the wine, and the water. So that the very first step in every student's spiritual ascension must be the realization of an indwelling Spirit of God. Ah, yes. But after they have come to some little awareness of it, there comes this point that we have been taking up tonight. What is the nature of that God that is with us? Is the presence of God with us going to reward us? Is it going to punish us? Is it going to heal us? Is it going to visit iniquity upon us unto the third and fourth generation? And only after a student has really attained the realization that there is the presence of God in me, the Spirit of God in me, the indwelling Christ that Paul taught, only then can we begin to give them these principles of the nature of God, so now they can realize, since there is no place in God for evil, no ground in God, no foundation in God for evil, this God that is with me is a wholly good influence, a perfect influence, an influence for my freedom, for my joy, for the infinite nature of good in my experience. Now it is that we begin to reveal the nature of God. To try to reveal this to the young student doesn't succeed, because the young student is indoctrinated with his concepts of a God that gives and a God that withholds and a God that punishes and a God that rewards. And you can't at first break that through teaching. But after you've brought to them an experience of God's presence and they've actually felt it, then they can accept the fact that it's wholly good and in Him is no evil at all. On the entire spiritual path, always the first step is this awareness of God's presence, this ability to live always as if God were bearing witness with me, God going before me. But once that is attained, your next greatest unfoldment must be this nature of God, because this is the step that brings freedom. This is the step that brings the release from what the Master called this world. When he said, I have overcome this world, you can be assured he had fulfilled that to know him aright is life eternal. To know him aright, not as you've been taught, but to know him aright as that pure being in whom evil has no rise, no source, no foundation, no cause. Do you see that? No power. Then when you've got that, you have got your freedom. Because if God isn't the cause of these things, there is no cause. For God alone is law, life, substance, activity, being. This, then, likewise makes it possible to overcome idolatry, because when you have this God of purity, you have no person and no thing to fear, because there is no person or thing which has derived any qualities of evil, not from God. And what it has derived from mortal consciousness isn't power. If it isn't of God, it isn't power. Then we can say to it, in every appearance, in every form, so what? If it isn't of God, it isn't power. And so when we behold injustices, inequalities, sins, persecutions, revilings, we can always say, so what? Be not afraid. Be not afraid. None of this emanates from God. Therefore, Pilate, thou couldst have no power over me. The only power that you could have is what is derived from God. What isn't derived from God isn't power. And so we look at sin, and we look at disease, and we look at injustice, and we look at tyranny, and we say, so what? It isn't of God, it isn't power. And so you are going to witness in all of these international affairs, you will witness the dissolution of every one of these tyrannies, every one of these evils. They'll be dissolved, but they'll be dissolved because there are now people on earth knowing that they have no existence in God, and therefore they have no existence. They do not have their rise in God, therefore they have no power. See that? Just 10 righteous men in a city can save it. And just a few, or few hundred, or few thousand, who can face every situation of human experience in that realization, you didn't have your rise in God, you are not power. You had no foundation in God, you have no power. You have no law of God to maintain or sustain you. And then rest. Rest in His Word. Rest in this Word. Abide in this Word. Dwell in the secret place of the Most High. Always looking out at these forms or formations without hate, love, or fear. And why? Because if they don't have their rise in God, they have no substance, no law, no cause, no effect. You will prove in your individual experience the degree of freedom from these universal beliefs or claims. And the moment you do, remember that you are beginning to free your neighbor. Not because he asks for a treatment and not because you give him a treatment, but because you merely look at him in his sins or diseases and smile within yourself. This has no rise in God, no foundation in God. It has no law of God. Be not afraid. See that? As you begin to see how here and there a friend, a neighbor, or as I have told you, in the schoolroom, proven that disease has no power in the schoolroom if only the teacher is aware of the truth. So you will see that you become the power in your community. And there's no reason why anyone can't be the power in the entire world in proportion as they can. Because even though they may not individually be all over the world, they will be imparting by their influence so that there will be a circle of Christhood around the globe. And what is a circle of Christhood? Except a circle of those who realize that evil does not have its rise in God. Therefore, it has no law, no substance to sustain it. And abiding in that truth, watch it as it dissolves and disappears. That is the circle of Christhood. Those who do not accept evil as real because they do not accept evil as having a foundation in God. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joel, for letting us see and recognizing together that we are part of this circle of Christhood, that we cannot accept that there's such thing as disease, disaster, and death, and that we can no longer make that real for ourselves. So even though we don't know how to change it or how to look at it in a new way, we are certainly going to ask for it, and we're certainly going to practice it by becoming present in this moment. So that's the responsibility for ourselves, what Joel is talking about too, and that's great. It's like, it starts with you. There's not a God responsible for what you see as sin, disease, and disaster. No, it starts right here. Like in my belief, in the universal belief of humanhood, I see that, and I validate it if I make it real for myself. That is my world. So the change that Joel is talking about in your community starts with you not acknowledging the disease, the sin, and disaster and all this, by recognizing it's taking place outside myself, apparently in this world, but that world doesn't have any reality. No, now I'm turning within and come to relaxation into the stillness of my inner being, recognizing that God is omnipresent and is with me, and I'm a whole part of it. So wonderful, incredible possibilities here for awakening, for healing, by recognizing that what is in God is whole already. So thank you for being part of that and practicing that with me. And so next week we continue with another episode of the Tree of Life tape group, and I hope to see you there. Thank you for everything, and I'm playing some music to stay in the energy or to connect even deeper within and share the joy together. Thank you for everything, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.